Hey YouTube, welcome back to Homegrown Outdoors, where we review American-made outdoor gear. Today we are doing a comparison of the relatively new Leupold Freedom RDS red dot sight alongside the EOTech 512, which has been around forever. Before you get too frustrated, I get that this is a little bit apples and oranges. I mean, they're both sort of battle sights. The EOTech is holographic. The Leupold is a true red dot, so the mechanism at play there, the technology is different. There's lots of cool stuff out there. If you want to geek out on the differences between a holographic sight and a red dot, I will leave you to it, but I'm not going to get into it today. They're two great American-made sights that I happen to have, so I figured I would do a little bit of a comparison in case you're looking at the two. Price-wise, just to get started, the EOTech is going to have a retail of about $4.99. Current street price is about $4.75. The Leupold, on the other hand, retails this one at $300, and is coming in on the street at about $279. Now, they make a version of the Leupold that has a BDC turret that you can dial up to 500 yards for a 55 grain 223. That one's a little bit more expensive. EOTech has piles and piles of different sights and options, and you can get into night vision stuff and magnifiers, and so we're just looking at these two side by side for today. I'm not trying to be the be all end all for red dots and holographic sights. The two of them from a dimension standpoint are pretty similar. So the EOTech comes in at 5.6 inches long, and the Leupold is 5.43. So it's a little bit hard for me to get them both in the frame there. But you can see lengthwise, they're very similar. Now the difference is that the EOTech, when you've got it mounted up, has got sort of the nose that sticks out on the front that's down low, whereas all of the Leupold is raised off the rail with that mounting system. So this has never created an issue for me, but the way the EOTech sort of sits on the rail, sometimes the front end can get a little bit close to the fore end on an AR. So they're set up a little bit different so far as sort of how they're shaped, but the actual dimensions are very similar. Weight-wise, we're going to weigh them both with their mounting option. So the Leupold's 12.5 ounces. The EOTech is at 10.7, so that's actually a little bit under what they advertise. This is a little bit older EOTech too, so their current information says 11.5 ounces, by the way, but still a bit lighter than the Leupold. So far as weight goes, the EOTech checks that box. Looking at specs a little bit further, the EOTech is advertised to be water resistant up to 10 feet. Submerged down to 10 feet. I don't see anything on submerging the Leupold, so I would say the EOTech is going to win that too. I think generally waterproof, fog-proof, all that stuff like most Leupolds, but I didn't find anything so far as submerging it. One of the differences, and these videos never really do the sights justice when you're sort of looking down the sight and trying to see the reticle. So I'm not going to do too much of that comparison there. Let me turn up the EOTech and see if you can see it at all. There we go. So field of view is one thing you'll notice, and if I were outside, you'd be able to see this a bit better. Vertically, I feel like the field of view is very similar between the two, but because of the shape of the EOTech with that holographic, you're a bit wider. So I think you have a better, there's no thinking to it. You definitely have a wider field of view with the EOTech than the Leupold, so the EOTech would get a check there as well. The reticle itself, with the Leupold, it's a 1 MOA dot, so a single dot there. The EOTech, now that I have it turned way up, it just looks like a red blur to you there. It's a 65 MOA ring with a 1 MOA dot in the middle. So sort of different setups. I think the EOTech, in a sort of fast-paced, battle type situation, that ring is probably going to attract your attention a bit better, and target acquisition is probably a little bit quicker with an EOTech type sight. The Leupold is a little less distracting to me, to be honest with you. So it's a single 1 MOA dot. Between the two, I probably like the single dot better, but they serve a little bit different purpose. So that would be sort of up for debate so far as which one is, quote, better. Field of view, the EOTech definitely wins. The reticle itself, I probably prefer the Leupold. Adjusting these things, so the Leupold, you've got windage and elevation both with flat screws on the side, half MOA clicks with the EOTech. The Leupold, on the other hand, quarter MOA dial there. So from a sort of how granular you can get with your adjustments, the Leupold gets the check there with a quarter MOA versus a half MOA with the EOTech. But again, for the type of site that you're dealing with and the typical ranges that you're going to be operating, that may not be a big deal to you, but just so you know, quarter MOA for the Leupold, half for the EOTech. Battery life. So the batteries in the EOTech that was a big part of the reason that I bought this one. So the 512 uses two AA batteries. So from an availability standpoint, I like that. Because of that, you sort of have that longer front end. So what I was complaining about in a way earlier was my own decision because it's the style battery that I wanted. The Leupold, the only option you've got with that one is a CR2032. I think it's a 3-volt. Again, other EOTechs have other battery options, so just talking about the 512 specifically here. So different types of batteries, battery availability, you can sort of figure that out for yourself, what your preferences are. The EOTech advertises 2,500 hours of continuous use on setting 12. So you've got 20 brightness settings, and that is controlled with the up and down buttons right here. From a function standpoint, to turn the EOTech on, you just hit either one of the buttons. To turn it off, you hit them both, and it shuts back off. So on setting 12, so pretty much in the middle of the settings, 2,500 hours of continuous use with lithium batteries. It's a bit lower with alkalins. The Leupold advertises 1,000 hours of battery life on the medium setting, and that again is off that single CR 2032 battery. Now, so 2,500 hours is better than 1,000 hours, if in case math isn't your thing. But the way the Leupold works is a little bit different. So again, just single push button with the Leupold. So single push on, that's how you adjust. The flash there tells you you're at the high end of brightness, and then you start working your way back down. And if you press and hold, the thing shuts off. The difference is that the Leupold has motion sensing technology. So if you leave this thing sit for 5 minutes, that red dot is going to shut itself off, and the next time you pick it up, it will turn right back on. And I've tested it, and it works if you leave it sitting around for days and weeks. I'm not sure that's how Leupold sort of advertises or instructs you to use it, but that's how I've used it, and every time I pick it up, it's on. So in that case, the weapon is in sort of a ready state. Not that hitting that on button is a big deal, but after 5 minutes, it shuts off. The EOTech has an auto shut off feature as well, depending on which button you used to turn it on. So if you turned it on with the up arrow button, you have an 8-hour auto shut off. So 8 hours from now, that thing will shut itself off. If you turn it on with the down arrow button, like this, now you have a 4-hour shut off. So either way, the thing's going to be on for a good long time if you forget about it before it's going to shut itself off. So while the 2,500 hour battery life is without a doubt superior, I think there is sort of the ability to leave that thing on and kill some battery in a bit different way than what you've got with the Leupold. While we're talking a little bit about the controls, again, with the EOTech, everything is on the back, controlled by those two buttons. So either one of them turns it on. Pressing them both together, turn it off. With the Leupold, it's a single button on the side. I prefer the controls on the Leupold primarily because I run a flip-up sight behind both of these. So if it were on the rifle, you would have your backup sight sort of mounted right here, your flip up right behind it, and you're sort of trying to reach down and get into those buttons is just a little bit tricky. I'm nitpicking a bit, but I do like just having a single button up on the side. I think it's easier it's undoubtedly easier to get to when you're running backup sights, flip up sights. So control wise, I think the Leupold gets the check mark there. Warranties, Leupold, all of their gold ring stuff, and this is considered a gold ring. The American made stuff has a lifetime warranty. With EOTech, it is 10-year, which is still pretty solid. In that vein, Leupold advertises that they've put the RDS, the Freedom RDS, through their Punisher, which is a recoil rig that tries to beat the tar out of a sight, and it holds up to that. And EOTech has got a whole lot of history in a whole lot of unfriendly places. So I think from a durability standpoint, it would be hard for me to try to convince you that the Leupold is going to outlast or take more of a beating than the EOTech. These things, there are lots of stories from the battlefield about EOTechs lasting through some pretty tough stuff. So warranty-wise, the Leupold wins out, but durability-wise, I'd be surprised if the EOTech weren't more durable. The holographic mechanism in and of itself is a bit more durable, the way that it works. You can read up some more on that, but if the glass is partially obstructed or even partially broken, holographic sight is still going to work. So I don't think anybody's got much of a durability complaint with an EOTech. But that said, the Leupold has been through some pretty rigorous testing. I think for standard home defense type stuff, honestly, the Leupold is the one that's on my primary rifle right now. But I'm not going to pretend that it's something it's not when comparing it to an EOTech type sight. They both mount on rails in a little bit different way. So the Leupold, has a separate, obviously has separate rings and mount system. 3 Torx Allen keys there get you a good secure connection on the rail. The EOTech, it's run off that flat head or that thumb screw there, which clamps down on the rail down below. I don't know that one is necessarily better than the other. I think I prefer having the 3 Allen keys there to the one kind of flathead here. But if I were in, you can imagine where it would be easier to swap the EOTech out if you were in a difficult set of circumstances with limited tools, if you didn't have that Torx head with you, where you'd be able to figure out a way to get that EOTech off. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. I think this one may be a little bit more secure in the way that it mounts. That said, I've had that EOTech for the better part of a decade and never had an issue. So they are both set up for absolute co-witness. So when you're running backup sights, the red dot and your either A2 front post or your flip ups are all going to be at the same vertical location. So it's all going to sort of line up. You don't have to change cheek weld or anything to change from using either the red dot or the holographic sight or your flip up iron. So everything is in the same spot there. One thing with the Leupold that I can imagine would get some folks' attention, and not in a good way, is that shiny front glass. So it's reflective, is sort of the easiest way I can put it. So if you're in a situation, law enforcement or military, there are definitely some situations where having a mirror on the front of the sight is not ideal. The EOTech on the other side, you're just sort of looking at glass there. With a holographic sight, the reticle that's being projected is only coming back to you as well. So anybody that's out in front of you can't see it. So that shiny glass, from a coating standpoint, Leupold knows a whole lot about lens coatings. Between the two, I'm not sure I see a whole lot of difference in clarity. I think the color correctness of the Leupold may be slightly better, but I think the Leupold may also be just slightly darker too, so far as light transmission when you're looking through the two. And as I mentioned earlier, you've definitely got more field of view with the EOTech. So overall, again, being honest, it's a little bit of an apples to oranges, but not quite. I mean, they're both used in similar applications. The EOTech has got decades of history on the battlefield, and I'm certainly not trying to detract from that at all. It is a more expensive sight. Better field of view for sure. I think durability is certainly outstanding. Better battery life, kinda. Again, I think the motion sensor technology in that Leupold is really cool. As they mount on the rifle, just sort of from an aesthetic standpoint, which might sound silly, but I'm just being honest with you, I think I prefer the Leupold. Again, because everything is sort of raised off the rail a bit. It doesn't feel quite as cluttered along the rail as my EOTech does sometimes, but I don't think that's a functional problem. That's just my personal preference. Between the two, I think it's hard to not like the EOTech. Again, proven track record, all of that stuff. But at the same time, for $300 or under $300 on the street, I think the Leupold RDS the Freedom RDS is pretty solid. For a home defense type application, that shiny front doesn't worry me too much. If I've got that thing out and I'm using it, I think there are going to be other things potentially revealing my position rather than the reflective lens. But if I were in a battlefield or in a law enforcement type role, I might feel differently about that, and that's why I bring it up. The controls, for me, no doubt I prefer the Leupold. So like I said, for the kind of primary rifle at my place right now, I've got the Leupold on it. I still have the EOTech. I have no intention to get rid of the EOTech. I have it mounted on another rifle. I think it's great, but I think if you're price sensitive, I would not be afraid of that Leupold. For $300, it's an American-made red dot, which is awesome. The other American-made red dots are going to be in a different price category, aim points and whatnot. If you've got the $500 for a holographic sight, or if you're interested in any of the other stuff that EOTech has to offer, magnifiers or night vision or any of that, you're going down a whole different rabbit hole, and EOTech is sort of the route to go. So I think they both have a role. They both sort of serve their place, and I'm glad I've got them both. So hopefully the review was somewhat helpful for you. If you want to see more American-made outdoor gear reviews, please subscribe, hit that like button. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.